Hey everybody, read the description, but the main idea is that we're going to be reading Bitcoin is Digital Scarcity. We're going to be doing an audio version, so if you're like driving in your car or you just want to listen to an article without reading it yourself, you just want to listen to it. So I'm going to be doing that because I also want to read this and I don't want to just read it for myself. I also want to share it so that way I can learn it as well, and I want to build a community around this. So without further ado, I'm going to start reading Bitcoin is Digital Scarcity and we're going to break it up into parts. So we're gonna start at the top. This is by I forget who this is by, but it's by somebody. But basically, it's a very good article. It was recommended to me, and let me just see who it's by. Hold on. Bitcoin is Digital Scarcity author. Okay, it's by Gigi, who's a Bitcoiner and software engineer. Okay, Der Gigi. All right. So Bitcoin is Digital Scarcity by Der Gigi. Here we go. We should treat computers as fancy telephones whose purpose is to connect people. Information is alienated experience. Information is not something that exists. Indeed, computers don't really exist exactly. They are only subject to human interpretation. This is a strong primary humanism I am promoting. As long as we remember that we ourselves are the source of our value, our creativity, our sense of reality, then all of our work with computers will be worthwhile and beautiful. That quote is by Jaron Lanier. Another quote by Charles Stross. It turns out that the killer application for virtual reality is other human beings. Build the world that people want to inhabit and the inhabitants will come. End quote. There is much to be said about virtual worlds. The information revolution, as it is called, has been going on for multiple decades, and it should be apparent to everyone that our world is becoming more digital by the day. But what does that mean exactly? Does it mean that things are transforming into something that is less real? Well, absolutely everything dematerialized, ourselves included. Is the rapture of the nerds imminent and only those who praise the gods of the singularity will be saved? I hope not. While it is true that software is eating the world, we have to differentiate between the digital and the virtual. Digital versus virtual. As any dictionary will tell you, digital is anything that can be expressed as digits, i.e., any information that can be represented in discrete numerical form. In our modern world of binary encoding, that means everything that can be encoded as zeros and ones. And then there's a blurb. Digital adjective one expressed in discrete number form, especially for use by computer or other electronic device. Okay, not everything that is digital is also virtual. A digital radio is not a virtual radio. It just works differently than an analog radio. Once said radio is put into a computer game, however, it clearly becomes a virtual radio. According to one dictionary definition, virtual is anything that is existing or resulting in essence or effect, though not in actual fact or form. A virtual meeting room is not an actual meeting room, but it has the effect of one. It is made of bits and bytes as opposed to brick and mortar. But the meetings that are being held in it, the conversations that are being had, and the decisions that are being made are still real. The space is virtual, what happens in it is not. As we shall see, digital money can and will emerge in virtual worlds. In fact, it has emerged many times in multiple worlds and various forms. To paraphrase Charles Stross, build a world that facilitates trade and money will emerge. Virtual scarcity. As we have seen in Chapter 4, humans have used a multitude of objects as many over the millennia: cattle, salt, shells, bones, pearls, stones, copper, bronze, silver, gold, and other precious metals. While the list of historical monies is long, there is one trait that all functioning monies share: scarcity. After all, if something is extremely easy to find or produce, it isn't good money, or at least not for long. Digital goods are not naturally scarce. The marginal cost to replicate them is practically zero, as anyone who ever copy and pasted something can attest to. For this reason, digital scarcity used to be an oxymoron. If something is digital, it is just information, and information can be easily copied. Before Bitcoin, all digital scarcity was scarcity by authority, authority that can be circumvented or exploited. It was always simulated scarcity, virtual, not real. Without the limitations of physics, digital goods necessitate that a central authority regulates the issuance, access, and duplication of said digital goods. If access isn't regulated, anyone can simply take the information that represents this digital good and make copies of it, or sometimes even more problematic, change it. It does not matter if it is the bits and bytes that define the balance of your bank account, the books in your Kindle, the movies in your Netflix library, the songs in your Spotify playlist, or the items in your favorite video game. If access is not centrally controlled, people will change things to their advantage. They will update the balance of their bank account and modify in game items to make their character more powerful. In other words, they will cheat. Digital goods are just information, and information wants to be free. As the unsinkable ships of Pirate Bay and endless leaks and data breaches clearly show, building a cage around information is anything but easy. To get a better understanding of digital goods and their scarcity or lack thereof, we will take a look at the virtual worlds that first spawned them, online games, a short history of virtual economies. In game economies are almost as old as networked gaming itself. In 1995, Julian DeBall published MUD Money, which describes how money was introduced in multi user dungeons. Coins would appear randomly in these online worlds, so if you stroll around for long enough, you would over time find enough money to pay for certain goods and services in these games. Rendell Farmer, a researcher at MIT who studied the emergence of virtual economies at this time, describes how in a game called Habitat, players could acquire funds by engaging in business, winning contests, finding buried treasure, and so on. He details how players would get a certain amount of tokens every time they log in, and how they would spend their tokens on, among other things, various items for sale and vending machines called vendroids. There were also pawn machines which would buy objects at a discount, of course. Money, gold, points, tokens, and coins are constant companions in almost all games. Come to think of it, most of the games that we now consider classics have money like objects in their virtual worlds. Mario has his coins, Sonic has his rings, and almost every final boss will drop precious items or heaps of gold once he is slain. In RPGs in particular, no matter what kind of creatures you are fighting, you will probably have to acquire gold to upgrade your weapons and armor. However, when it comes to single player games, the digital coins you collect are worthless. But once an exchange is facilitated via network play, things start to get interesting. Players will inevitably trade the virtual treasures they collected over time, whether there are official trading mechanisms in the game or not. All that is required is that the stuff that is found and stolen stays around, that the shared world is persistent. If a world is shared and persistent, real money and real economies can emerge. While there are many games that had and still have vast virtual economies, I want to highlight three in particular: Ultima Online, Diablo 2, and Second Life. Ultima Online, planning a virtual economy. Ultima Online was released on September 24th, 1997 by Origin Systems. It was one of the first MMORPGs that garnered mainstream attention, attracting over 100,000 players within 6 months. Like the MUDs before it, the world of Ultima Online is a persistent world, which means that your actions and interactions in the game have lasting consequences for yourself and other players. In stark contrast to single player games or non persistent multiplayer games, you cannot save the state of your game and load it at a later point. Everything happens in real time with real consequences for real people. Consequently, the time and effort players put into leveling up the characters and gathering items and resources are real as well, which in turn spawn real economies around these virtual games. To quote Zachary Booth Simpson, who studied the in game economics of the game extensively, Ultima Online and online games similar to it offer a unique research platform because while the commodities traded are virtual, the resulting economies are not simulations. Matthew Beller from the Mises Institute echoes this sentiment. Some economists might dismiss virtual worlds as an application for economics, given that they do not contain any resources that are traditionally considered scarce: lumber, steel, oil, but a closer inspection reveals that some virtual worlds contain real market economies complete with scarce resources, property rights, entrepreneurship, and exchange. The world of Ultima Online allows for spontaneous economic interaction between players. Players are free to trade as they see fit, directly without restriction in regards to what to trade or with whom. However, some parts of the game's economy are planned by the game's designers. For example, players can sell their goods to NPCs, receiving gold in return. Also, players can explore the world and harvest natural resources. Example, hunt wild animals for fur and meat, cut down trees to gather wood, and so on. Naturally, these computer controlled aspects of the game have to be pre programmed. How much of a good is an NPC vendor willing to buy? And for what price? How many rabbits spawn in a certain area? How quickly will a forest regrow? So we're going to stop here and then we're going to continue with part two in the second part.